The galaxy had always been a place of constant motion. Ships traveled between planets, races traded resources, and powerful alliances kept peace between the many species. But then a strange thing happened. The Earth, once a distant and insignificant planet, fell off the radar. For years, no one heard from humanity, and over time, they were forgotten. The Galactic Council, a vast group of leaders from across the galaxy, had ruled over countless species for centuries. The humans of Earth, they believed, were little more than an old myth, a species lost to history. When Earth's colonies had once been wiped out, they assumed the planet itself had followed the same fate. It wasn't until decades later, when the last ship from Earth went silent, that anyone began to wonder if humans had ever truly existed. The Council dismissed any concern. They had their own matters to tend to. With Earth's long absence, there was little to fear from its people. The great empires of the galaxy had been at peace for hundreds of years. The warlike species had long been pacified, and the once divided galaxy had become a harmonious collection of planets working together. But then, something unexpected happened. A deep space signal emerged from Earth's last known location. It wasn't a routine message. No. It was something far more unusual. It was a coded transmission, an ancient signal that had not been used in centuries. The message was simple, but the words it carried sent waves of confusion and fear through the Galactic Council. The message read, "Earth's battleship has arrived." At first, the Council's leaders thought it was a prank or a mistake. They assumed that a lost signal from an old ship had somehow been picked up. But as the days passed, more signals came. Each message was the same. No one knew exactly what it meant, but one thing became clear. Something was approaching Earth's coordinates, and whatever it wasn't a normal spacecraft. The galaxy's most advanced ships scrambled to investigate, to reach the location where the signal had originated. They assumed that maybe a forgotten ship had finally returned to its original home. Or perhaps it was just a malfunction, something insignificant. But as each ship came closer to Earth, they disappeared. There were no explosions, no sounds of battle, just the sudden silence of their disappearances. The commanders, desperate to find answers, began to realize that something powerful was indeed hiding near Earth. The Council grew nervous. They began to pull back their most valuable fleets, worried that whatever was out there could be dangerous. The messages from Earth grew more cryptic, adding to the mystery. Some words in the transmissions were ancient, nearly forgotten in time, but others carried a sense of purpose, as though humanity was sending a warning to the galaxy, reminding everyone of their presence. Yet the galaxy's leaders still didn't take the situation seriously. After all, what could possibly threaten a galaxy united in peace? The news about Earth's strange signals spread quickly through the ranks of the Galactic Council. Among them, there was one leader who had always feared the humans, Captain General Azara of the Catresh Alliance. The Catresh were an old and proud race of warriors, and Azara had long been taught the ancient tales of humanity's past. While many considered these stories to be mere legends, Azara knew better. She had heard tales of Earth's history, of its savage battles, its wars, and the resilience of its people. In every story, there was one constant. Humans had been survivors. Time and time again, they had been pushed to the brink, and yet they had risen from the ashes. Azara feared that this was not a simple signal. It was a warning, a declaration. As the news reached her, she convened an emergency meeting of the Catresh High Command. The council room was filled with nervous chatter, a few Catresh warriors whispering about the potential threat. Azara stood at the head of the table, her stern gaze fixed on the gathering. "I do not believe this is a coincidence," she said, her voice commanding the room's attention. "We know Earth's history. We know how humanity fought, even when the odds were against them. We cannot afford to underestimate them now." Some of the commanders nodded, but others were skeptical. They had never seen a human ship in action, and their perception of the human race had long been one of weakness. "The Earthlings are nothing more than myth," one officer said dismissively. "Their wars are long gone. They pose no threat." Azara's eyes narrowed. "You forget, my friend, that we are the ones who pushed Earth into the shadows. What if humanity has spent all these years preparing for something greater? What if they've learned from their past mistakes and are now stronger than ever?" The room fell silent. No one could deny Azara's words. Earth had been lost to time, but what if, deep down, they had always been preparing for this very moment? What if they had built something more powerful than anyone could imagine? The Katresh High Command agreed to send a fleet to Earth's last known location, but no one was ready for what they would find. As the fleet approached, something enormous appeared on their sensors. A ship. A battleship. Its size was beyond anything they had ever encountered. It wasn't a modern warship. It was an ancient one, far older than any ship they had ever seen. And yet it had technology far beyond their comprehension. The ship was cloaked, hidden from view until the fleet was dangerously close. Its massive size dwarfed anything the Katresh had in their arsenal. As they drew closer, the shape of the ship became clearer, its silhouette dark and foreboding against the backdrop of space. This was no ordinary vessel. This was a relic of an ancient time, yet it radiated power in a way no ship should. Its weapon systems were active, its shields unbreakable. As the Katresh fleet tried to make contact, their transmissions were ignored. For hours, there was only silence. And then, finally, the battleship began to move. Back at the Galactic Council, the news of the Katresh fleet's disappearance was met with alarm. The Council's leaders, those who had dismissed Earth as a threat, now began to see the situation in a different light. A reality they had ignored for so long was now standing before them. The humans' battleship had arrived, and it was far beyond anything they had ever anticipated. The galaxy trembled in uncertainty as the massive shadow of Earth's battleship loomed over the star systems. Sol Invictus, the name of the ship, had not been spoken aloud in centuries. The once-forgotten vessel was now the symbol of humanity's return. The power and majesty of the ship sent shockwaves through the galaxy, leaving every species wondering how such a mighty force had remained hidden for so long. As Sol Invictus moved through space, its presence was impossible to ignore. The ship's massive hull gleamed with a dark metallic sheen, the markings of Earth's long-lost civilization barely visible on its surface. It was clear that no ordinary ship could command such power. The ship was ancient, its design reminiscent of an era long gone, yet its technology surpassed anything the galaxy had ever seen. Across the galaxy, representatives of the Galactic Council, once confident in their unity and strength, now found themselves watching in disbelief. The Katresh fleet sent to investigate the mysterious signal from Earth had vanished without a trace. No one knew what had happened to them, but there was no denying it. The battleship was real, and it was advancing toward the heart of the galaxy. Captain General Azara, once skeptical of the Earthlings' potential, had come to realize that the legends she had heard as a child were not merely stories. The humans were far more than what the galaxy had believed. With a mix of awe and fear, she turned her attention to the war room on the Katresh homeworld. She was not alone in her concern. "I've sent every ship I could spare to stop the Sol Invictus," General Azara said, her voice calm but filled with tension. "But we are no match for it. No one is." Her officers exchanged uneasy glances, the implications of her words sinking in. The humans had always been considered weak, but now it was clear that Earth had kept a secret, a terrible, powerful secret. Back at the Galactic Council, panic began to spread. Representatives from the most powerful species now found themselves in a rare position, afraid. The leader of the Galactic Council, Chancellor Velka of the Zentari species, paced nervously before the assembly. He had seen the rise and fall of countless empires, but nothing could have prepared him for this. This is impossible, Velka muttered to himself, his usually composed demeanor slipping. We knew the humans had their wars, but to think, they were hiding such power. What have they been doing all these years? In the council chamber, there was a heavy silence. Some were still in denial, others tried to find ways to resolve the crisis diplomatically, but Velka knew deep down that this was no longer a simple misunderstanding. The Sol Invictus was a weapon of immense destruction, and it was making its way toward the heart of their empire. It was clear. The humans had returned with a force no one could match. On Earth, within the Sol Invictus, there were humans watching as their ship approached the galactic core. The once quiet planet, now under the control of a new generation, had not forgotten what had happened to them centuries ago. The memories of Earth's near destruction were still fresh in the minds of those who had lived through it. Their ancestors had fought hard for survival, and they had preserved their knowledge for just this moment. Admiral Lena Hayes stood before the command console of the ship, her eyes fixed on the vast expanse of space. She was a descendant of the original Earth Command, a leader chosen to bring humanity's power back to the stars. "We're finally here," she said softly, her voice filled with determination. "It's time to remind them what humanity is capable of." Lena's hands moved across the console, activating the ship's systems. The Sol Invictus had been silent for years, waiting in the farthest reaches of space, hidden from the galaxy's watchful eyes. But now, it was ready. The energy hums of the ship filled the air as weapons systems powered up, its shields activating with a low, deep rumble. The ship was a true relic, and it had not just been waiting to return, it had been preparing to strike. Across the ship's decks, crew members from Earth readied themselves. The technology they were using was ancient, yet far ahead of anything the galaxy had developed. The ship's reactors had been recharged, the warp drives were activated, and the communication systems were tuned to the frequencies of the Galactic Council. But humanity was not there to talk. They were there to take what was theirs. Admiral Hayes walked down the ship's long, narrow hallway, a sense of pride swelling in her chest. She thought of her ancestors, those who had endured the wars, the struggles, and the isolation. They had built this ship to protect Earth, but they had never imagined that their descendants would have to use it to reclaim their place in the galaxy. "Prepare the fleet," Lena commanded as she approached the bridge. "It's time to show them that humanity is no longer the forgotten species of the galaxy. We are the ones who have been waiting for centuries." Back at the Galactic Council, the entire assembly was thrown into disarray as Sol Invictus's energy readings appeared on their monitors. The ship was within range now. Its trajectory was direct, straight to the heart of the Council's seat of power. "We have to act now," Velka urged, his voice shaking. "We cannot wait any longer. Prepare all fleets for combat." But despite the Chancellor's orders, there was still no clear strategy. The galaxy's strongest fleets had already been wiped out by the Earth battleship, and no one knew how to counter the threat. The Sol Invictus was beyond anything they had seen before. In the command room of the Galactic Council, a representative of the Zothar, a race known for their mastery of diplomacy, stepped forward. "We must communicate with them. We must offer peace." Chancellor Velka looked at him with disbelief. "You think peace will work? They've come all this way with that kind of power, and you think they want peace?" "No, it's too late for that." The Zothar representative hesitated but nodded in agreement. "Perhaps, but we must try." Velka turned his gaze to the view screen. The Sol Invictus was nearing its destination, its powerful form dominating the galaxy's skyline. He knew there would be no peace. There would be no negotiation. The humans had returned, and they weren't asking for a place among the stars. They were taking it by force. The Council knew they had no choice. The war was about to begin. Humanity had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same again, as Mo. Sol Invictus neared the Galactic Council's headquarters. Its weapons remained locked, waiting. The ship's journey had been long, but now it was time for humanity to make its statement. The enormous shadow of Sol Invictus cast its reach further into the galaxy as it neared the heart of the Galactic Council. For centuries, the galaxy had known peace, a balance of power between countless species and alliances. The various factions had grown accustomed to their power, certain that their superior technology and long histories ensured that no species could stand against them. Yet nothing had prepared them for this. Nothing could have. Back in the Galactic Council's headquarters, the leader sat in a tense silence. The usual hum of discussion had turned to a cold, nervous stillness. No one had expected humanity's return, let alone with a warship of such unimaginable scale and power. Across the table, representatives of various species whispered among themselves, trying to figure out what to do, but deep down they all knew that Sol Invictus was beyond their reach. The battle they feared was already beginning. Chancellor Velka, the leader of the Galactic Council, stood at the center of the room, his hands clasped tightly behind his back. His normally calm expression was now fraught with anxiety. He had seen countless threats in his time, but the presence of this massive human battleship was unlike anything he had encountered. "They've crossed every boundary," Velka murmured, his voice filled with disbelief. "We didn't even know they had ships of this kind." A murmur of agreement spread through the room, but no one dared to speak the full truth. Earth had been forgotten by many, its species seen as weak and primitive. But now, it seemed, the galaxy had gravely underestimated them. The Sol Invictus wasn't just a ship, it was a statement, a declaration of war, and no one was prepared for it. "We have to make contact," said Keldar, a representative from the peaceful Mirari race. Her species had long maintained neutrality, in the galaxy's conflicts always advocating for diplomacy over violence. She stood, her face stern with the weight of the situation. "You're suggesting we talk to them?" questioned Captain Vathar of the Ziri Empire, a race known for their warlike nature. "They've already declared their power. What more is there to discuss?" "I agree," Velka interjected, his voice echoing through the chamber. "We cannot waste time. We must show them that we will not bow down to their demands. We must act before it's too late." A heated debate erupted among the council members. The Mirari pushed for peaceful negotiations, while the Zuri and others advocated for an immediate military response. Every species had their own stake in the matter, and every leader had a different opinion on how to handle the approaching human threat. Meanwhile, on board the Sol Invictus, Admiral Lena Hayes stood at the command center, her eyes fixed on the star systems passing by. She could feel the tension in the air. The ship's massive engines thrummed with power, and the sound of it reminded her that the galaxy was about to change. The human fleet, though smaller, had been ready for this moment for years. Now, they would reclaim what had been taken from them, their place in the stars. "We have to make a statement," Lena said, turning to her officers. "Our ancestors fought for this. For centuries, we've been silenced. Now it's time for the galaxy to remember who we are." Her crew nodded in solemn agreement. Each person aboard Sol Invictus knew what was at stake. The vastness of space stretched before them, but for the first time in centuries, Earth's might would once again be felt. Lena placed her hands on the console, steadying herself. "Prepare to send the message." She turned to Lieutenant Sora, a trusted officer who had served under her command. "Open the channel to the Galactic Council." Sora pressed a button, and the communications system hummed to life. Across the galaxy, the Council's leaders waited anxiously as Lena's voice filled the void. "This is Admiral Lena Hayes of Earth's Sol Invictus. The time has come for the galaxy to recognize the power of humanity once again. We have no interest in Endless negotiations or endless peace talks. Earth is here, and we are not asking for permission. The words were firm and resolute, echoing the tone of a people who had long been silenced. You have taken our colonies, ignored our existence, and left us in the shadows. But no more. You will surrender to us, or we will take our place among the stars by force. Lena paused, her eyes sweeping across the bridge as her words sank in. The decision had been made. There would be no turning back. Sol Invictus was no longer a symbol of the past. It was a weapon, one forged from the fires of Earth's trials, and now it would return to claim what had once been taken. Back on the council, the leaders of the galaxy watched in silence as the transmission ended. The room had gone completely still. No one could argue with the message they had just received. It was clear now that humanity was not seeking peace. They had arrived to demand control, to assert their dominance. And the galaxy's peace, built over centuries of fragile alliances, was in grave danger. Their arrogance is unmatched, Keldar said quietly. She could hardly believe what she had just heard. They expect us to surrender just like that? We have no choice, Velka replied, his voice barely above a whisper. If we don't give in, the Sol Invictus will tear us apart. We cannot match their firepower. There was a long pause. Across the room, the leaders shifted uncomfortably. This was not a simple matter of military force. This was about the future of the galaxy. What had been once a united front was now cracking under. The weight of a single ship, one that no one had expected. But there were still some who believed they could stand their ground. The Ziri, a proud warrior race, were among them. Vathar, the Ziri representative, stood up with determination in his eyes. We cannot let them walk over us. The galaxy cannot be ruled by one species. If we allow Earth to take over, it will be the end of everything we've fought for. Are you suggesting war? Velka asked, his voice cold. Not suggesting, Vathar said, his tone steely. I'm demanding it. We cannot bend to their will. The galaxy must stand together, or Earth will never stop. The room grew tense again. The leaders, divided on how to proceed, now faced the impossible question of whether to fight or submit. The once united galaxy was on the verge of splitting apart. Fear of Earth's power had caused rifts between the factions that no one had anticipated. On Sol Invictus, Admiral Hayes had finished sending her message. The ship was now on course for the Galactic Council's headquarters. There was no more talk of diplomacy. There would be no more waiting. Set the course, she said calmly. We are going to end this. It's time they learned what happens when you underestimate humanity. The Sol Invictus sailed through the dark expanse of space, a force unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. The sleek, towering battleship moved with purpose, its massive engines leaving a trail of light in its wake. Within the ship's command center, Admiral Lena Hayes stood firm, her gaze fixed on the approaching Galactic Council headquarters. The time for words had ended. The time for action had arrived. Lena's heart beat steady, but the weight of what she was about to do did not escape her. She was the leader of a new generation of humanity, one that had waited for this moment for centuries, and now the moment had come to reclaim Earth's place in the galaxy. As she stood at the ship's command console, the hum of the ship's power systems resonated through the room. The weapons systems were fully charged, the shields intact and unbreakable. Earth's battleship was ready for anything. But Lena knew it wasn't about brute force. It was about sending a message, one that the galaxy would never forget. "Admiral," said Lieutenant Sora, her voice steady, "we've completed the final adjustments to the communication systems. We're ready to send the next transmission." Lena nodded. The next step in their plan was crucial. It wasn't just about overwhelming the Galactic Council with their firepower. It was about making sure they understood the depth of humanity's anger and determination. The message would be a reminder of humanity's lost history and their demand for respect and sovereignty. "Send the message," Lena said, her voice calm but carrying the weight of centuries of forgotten struggle. Back at the Galactic Council, headquarters, the representatives of countless species watched in nervous anticipation. The silence was broken by the low hum of the Council's communication systems, signaling that another transmission from Sol Invictus was incoming. Everyone in the room knew what it meant. The message from Earth was coming, and they all feared what it would say. Chancellor Velka stood at the front of the room, his hands clasped tightly. The weight of the situation was not lost on him. For years, the Council had held the galaxy in its grip, ensuring that no one could challenge their power. But now, Earth had returned, and the power structure was shifting. "This is it," Velka said, turning to the assembly. "We need to hear what they have to say. There's no more time for negotiation." The holographic projector in the center of the room flickered to life. The screen displayed the image of the Sol Invictus in all its intimidating glory. The message was about to begin. Lena's face appeared on the screen, her expression unyielding. "This is Admiral Lena Hayes of Sol Invictus," she began. "To the Galactic Council we have made our intentions clear. We have come to reclaim what was taken from us, our place in this galaxy. You have ignored us for too long, and now we demand that you recognize humanity's rightful position." The room was filled with hushed murmurs as the council members exchanged uneasy glances. The tone of the message was unmistakable. There would be no diplomacy. There would be no peaceful negotiations. The humans were demanding that the galaxy bow to them or face the consequences. "We have no interest in endless talks or empty promises," Lena continued, her voice unwavering. "The time for negotiation has passed. Earth is not here to ask for permission. We are here to take back what was once ours." The room fell into stunned silence. The council members had hoped, against all odds, that a peaceful resolution could be found. But as Lena's words echoed through the room, it became clear that Earth was not asking for anything. It was demanding everything. "We give you one choice," Lena said, her gaze never faltering. "Surrender control of the galaxy's resources or face the might of Sol Invictus. We are not asking you to agree with us. We are giving you the chance to choose. But understand this. Earth will no longer remain in the shadows. This is the end of our silence and the beginning of your reckoning." With that, the transmission cut off. The silence in the council chamber was deafening. The representatives sat frozen, their minds racing. There was no going back. Earth had made its demand clear: submit or face war. For a long moment, the council remained in stunned silence. Velka was the first to speak, his voice low but filled with authority. "We cannot give in to this. We cannot allow one species to take control of the entire galaxy. The Sol Invictus may be powerful, but we have our strength in numbers." The Mirari representative, Keldar, stepped forward, her eyes filled with worry. "Are we truly prepared to face this? We've never seen anything like that ship. It's a force that could destroy us all." Vathar, the Zuri representative, sneered at the notion of backing down. "They are nothing but humans, just like the ones we have long heard about in our history books. They may have a powerful ship, but we can rally together. The galaxy has always been strong because we've stood united. And we must stand. United again," Velka said, his voice firm. "I will not let the galaxy be ruled by fear. We will fight." A tense discussion broke out as representatives argued fiercely over what to do. Some of them argued for war, saying that humanity had crossed a line by demanding the galaxy's resources. Others, particularly the Mirari and the peaceful species, advocated for negotiation. But even they knew that their options were dwindling. At the same time, the Ziri and other warrior races began preparing for the worst. Ships were mobilized, defenses strengthened, and alliances were forged under the pressure of humanity's threat. The once unified council was now splitting, torn between those who believed in diplomacy and those who saw no choice but to take up arms. Meanwhile, back on the Sol Invictus, the atmosphere was tense but focused. Lena stood on the bridge, her gaze fixed on the stars ahead. The decision had been made. The message had been sent. Humanity had drawn its line in the sand, and there would be no turning back. The Sol Invictus would not turn around. Not now. Not ever. "We're prepared for whatever comes next," said Sora, her voice steady as she worked the controls. "The fleet is ready. We've done everything we can." Lena nodded. "Good. But remember, this isn't just about firepower. This is about showing the galaxy who we are. We've fought too long in the dark. It's time for humanity to step into the light." As Sol Invictus continued its course toward the Galactic Council's headquarters, the crew prepared for the final act in their mission, the galaxy's reckoning. Earth had waited long enough, and now it was time to show the galaxy what it had forgotten. The galaxy, once united in peace, was now on the edge of an all-out war. The Sol Invictus had broken through every defense, and humanity's message had spread like wildfire. The powerful ship continued its relentless march toward the Galactic Council's headquarters, unyielding and unstoppable, and with each passing hour, the tension only grew. On Earth, humans had waited for this moment for centuries. A quiet, forgotten species had transformed into a force to be reckoned with. They had been silenced, but they were no longer willing to remain in the shadows. Earth's battleship, Sol Invictus, was the symbol of their resilience, their anger, and their demand for respect. Inside the command center of Sol Invictus, Admiral Lena Hayes stood tall, her eyes scanning the holographic projections that outlined the galaxy's key systems. The Galactic Council's heart was within reach. The time had come to make the final move. The countdown to a new era was ticking down, and there would be no turning back. "Admiral," said Lieutenant Sora, her voice calm yet filled with anticipation, "we've intercepted a transmission from the Council. They've asked for an emergency meeting." Lena's lips curled into a small, almost imperceptible smile. The galaxy's leaders were finally ready to listen. But it was too late for talks. The message had already been sent. "Let them meet," Lena replied firmly. "The time for words has passed." At the Galactic Council's headquarters, the representatives from every corner of the galaxy were gathered in the vast, hollowed-out chamber. The once unified assembly now faced an unprecedented challenge. The once great Galactic Council had become fractured, divided by the very force they had once dismissed. And now, humanity stood at the center of the galaxy, demanding their place. Chancellor Velka paced the room, his hands clasped behind his back. His once strong voice was filled with hesitation. "We've reached out to them," he said, looking to the gathered leaders. "We've made our offer for peace, but we know that humanity is not here for peace. They've made their demands clear." Keldar, the representative from the peaceful Mirari species, spoke up, her voice filled with concern. "We cannot allow this to spiral into war. The balance of the galaxy will be shattered, and many innocent lives will be lost." "But how can we stop them?" Vathar of the Ziri Empire interjected, his voice rising with frustration. "We've already seen their power. One ship has taken down our fleets. We have no choice but to fight." Velka's gaze flicked to the holographic map of the galaxy. The Sol Invictus was nearing its final approach. There was no more time to discuss. They had to act. "We can't let Earth dictate our future," Velka said, his voice finally steady. "But we must be careful. We are not facing an ordinary enemy. We are facing a species that has been forced into the shadows for too long. They won't stop until they've reclaimed everything." The council's debates continued, but the realization had already set in. They could not ignore humanity's return any longer. The once peaceful galaxy was now on the brink of war, and Earth's demands were clear. There would be no compromise. Back aboard Sol Invictus, Lena stood at the command center, her thoughts focused. The time for negotiations was over. The galaxy had been given a choice, and they had rejected it. Humanity had always been underestimated, dismissed as primitive. Now, the galaxy would face the consequences. "We've reached the galactic core," Sora announced as she updated the display. "We're entering the Council's territory. The entire fleet is standing by." Lena nodded. "Prepare for all possible scenarios. We've made our stand. If they want war, they'll have one." She turned and looked out at the view of space through the bridge's wide windows. The stars stretched far and wide, an endless sea of light. But now, in the darkness of space, there was no escaping Earth's return. Humanity had endured its greatest trials, and now it was ready to take back what had been stolen. As the Sol Invictus neared the Galactic Council's headquarters, its engines roared louder, sending waves of energy through the fabric of space. Its weapon systems were fully charged, and its shields were unbreakable. There was no turning back now. The battleship was a symbol of humanity's strength, and it would not be stopped. Velka and the other council leaders watched in silence as the massive ship appeared on their screens. The sight of the Sol Invictus was enough to send a chill through the room. The scale of the ship was unlike anything they had ever seen. It was not just a warship. It was a symbol of humanity's will to survive and to rise again. "Prepare to make our final stand," Velka said, his voice grim. "We must show them that we will not be cowed by their threats." The Zuri fleet, along with other military forces, began to position themselves around the council's headquarters. The air was thick with anticipation, and every representative knew that this could be the beginning of something far larger than any of them had expected. At that moment, Lena stepped forward on Sol Invictus. She was ready for whatever came next, but deep inside, she knew there would be no compromise. Humanity had fought too long, been silenced for too many centuries, and now it was time to reclaim their place. The Sol Invictus was their weapon, their legacy. And now the galaxy would understand what it meant to face the might of Earth. "Target the Council's headquarters," Lena ordered, her voice calm, but her words carrying the weight of 1,000 years of history. "We're making our point." Sora nodded and began entering commands into the control panel. As the Sol Invictus turned its guns toward the heart of the Galactic Council, the enormity of the situation hit everyone on board. The galaxy, united for so long, was now facing a choice: surrender to humanity's will or risk losing everything. Back on the council's side, the representatives had gathered one last time, their faces filled with a mixture of fear and determination. They knew that Earth was not going to relent, but they had no idea what would happen next. The threat was real. The Sol Invictus had made its move, and the galaxy was about to be torn apart. As Velka looked around at the gathered leaders, he realized that the time for unity had passed. The council would either stand together and resist, or they would fall apart under the weight of humanity's might. "There's no more time for debate," Velka said quietly. "We have no choice but to fight. Prepare for battle." The two sides were now locked in a tense standoff. The Sol Invictus loomed like a shadow, waiting for the council's final response. Would they give in to humanity's demands, or would they fight for the galaxy's future?